My school thought they were geniuses when they made the Wi-Fi password impossible to crack. They didn't realize they just declared war on 2,000 bored teenagers with nothing but time and spite. On Monday morning, Principal Morrison strutted onto the stage like he'd just solved crime. He had that smug adults finally outsmarted kids grin, and he kept bragging about a new, uncrackable Wi-Fi policy like it was a national security briefing. Behind him, the projector showed a slide with a padlock icon that looked like it was designed by someone's nephew. He didn't start with good morning. He started with consequences. New rule. Share the Wi-Fi password, you get suspended. He paused to let it sink in like we were supposed to clap. Then he added the part that made everyone sit up. The password was now a 47-character randomly generated string, changed weekly, and only teachers got it. It wasn't even words. It looked like a cat walked across a keyboard during a caffeine overdose. The teachers nodded like this was normal, like they weren't going to be the ones forgetting it every 5 minutes. Morrison said it was about focus and academic integrity. He said it was about protecting the network. He said a lot of things adults say when they want you to stop doing something fun. What he didn't understand is that high schoolers don't hear rule. We hear challenge. You can tell us not to chew gum and we'll invent gum. You can ban hats and we'll wear hats on our backpacks. You can lock Wi-Fi and you're basically handing out a free elective called creative compliance. The first day felt quiet, like a chessboard before the first move. Kids sat in the cafeteria with dead phones, staring at each other like cave people who just lost fire. The teachers walked around like they'd finally won. Then Marcus showed up. Marcus was that type of student who never raised his voice, never got detention, and somehow always looked like he was on his way to return a library book. He also had a very specific look on his face that morning, like he just discovered a loophole and was savoring it. He walked into the computer lab carrying an Ethernet cable that looked like it belonged to a construction crew. Later, someone measured it and swore it was 30 foot, but at the time it just looked comically wrong, like a python made of plastic. He plugged one end into the wall port inside the lab, fed it under the door, and sat in the hallway with his laptop like this was the most normal thing in the world. The cable snaked across the floor in one long, bright line of disrespect. People stepped over it like it was a museum exhibit. Kids started gathering just to watch, because nothing in school is more entertaining than an adult walking into a situation they don't understand. Morrison appeared like he'd been summoned by irritation alone. He stared at Marcus, then at the cable, then back at Marcus like he was watching a dog use a credit card. 30 feet? Are you kidding me? Morrison snapped. Marcus didn't even blink. The policy only mentions Wi-Fi. He said it like he was reading a menu. Morrison's face did that tight thing adults do when they realize they've lost control, but they're not ready to admit it. He gestured at the cable like it was a weapon. You can't do that. Marcus shrugged. I'm not on Wi-Fi. It would have been over if Morrison had laughed it off. If he'd said, okay, clever, now unplug it, and moved on. But he couldn't handle being out-lawyered by a kid with a backpack covered in math team pins. By the next day, Policy Update has shown hit every classroom door, printed in bold like a court summons. No excessively long cables. Tripping hazard. 6 foot max. 6 foot. Like the problem was the length, not the fact that we had created an entire new hobby. Marcus came back with the kind of compliance theater that makes you want to applaud and punch a wall at the same time. He walked in with a perfectly cut cable, measured down to the inch, and he taped tiny neon caution signs to the floor, each one screaming caution in miniature like the hallway was a crime scene. He even had a little strip of tape marking exactly where the cable could go, as if the school had asked him to host a safety seminar. He sat there, perfectly inside the rules, smiling like a saint. Teachers started taking sides right there. Some looked furious, like they wanted to melt the cable with their eyes. Others were biting the inside of their cheeks so they wouldn't laugh. Morrison saw the caution signs and went red. He couldn't punish Marcus without admitting the rule was stupid, so instead he did the thing he always did. He wrote another rule. That's when the rest of us realized something important. Morrison wasn't fighting Wi-Fi. He was fighting humiliation, and humiliation makes adults sloppy. The next escalation wasn't even Marcus alone. It was Marcus with friends. On Thursday, he came back with multiple 6-foot cables coiled like ropes. He had a little squad behind him, kids who looked like they'd been recruited for a heist. They formed up outside the lab, and I swear it looked like a relay team lining up for a race. One kid plugged into the wall inside the lab. Another kid plugged into that kid's device. Another plugged into that kid's. And suddenly there was a ridiculous chain of devices relaying the connection in 6-foot segments like we were building internet with Legos. It was the dumbest thing I had ever seen, and also the most beautiful. They called it the Bucket Brigade, like we were carrying water to put out a fire, except the fire was boredom and the water was forbidden bandwidth. Kids stood there holding phones and laptops like sacred torches, passing the connection down the line. Morrison stormed out, saw the chain, and just froze. He looked like he'd walked into a biology class and discovered the frog had filed paperwork. Marcus turned toward him, calm as ever. Compliance. He said it like a punchline, because it was. By lunch, people were reenacting it in the courtyard for fun. Kids were practicing their 6-foot spacing like it was a dance routine. Someone taped a ruler to a clipboard and started offering to verify compliance for laughs. Policy Update #2 dropped the next morning. No daisy chaining, no relaying, no intermediary devices. It read like it was written by a lawyer who had just learned what teenagers were capable of. The energy on campus shifted. At first, it had been Marcus doing something funny. Now it felt like an arms race. You could feel it in the air, like everyone was silently thinking, okay, what's the next loophole? It spread the way gossip spreads. Someone heard someone's cousin had a trick. Someone saw a teacher rolling their eyes and assumed there was weakness. By Friday, kids were talking about the Wi-Fi like it was a boss battle. The IT staff started looking like war veterans. You'd see them in the hallway carrying laptops with that 1,000-yard stare. They stopped making eye contact with students like we were all suspects. Then Jennifer went to the library and made it weird in a completely different way. Jennifer was the kind of student who could look you dead in the face and say something insane like it was a fact. She dressed like she'd just come from a debate tournament, even on days there wasn't one. She also had that calm, surgical, kind of petty. She noticed the library had a smart TV mounted on the wall for announcements and educational content. The TV was a school device. The TV was already connected. The TV didn't need a teacher typing in a password every week because it was provisioned on setup like a trusted device. Jennifer sat under it with her laptop open and started using it like a bridge. Not hacking it, not ripping anything open, just using it as an intermediary, the way you'd use a friend who already had a wristband to get into a concert. When Morrison caught her, it was almost quiet. We were in the library, so his anger came out in a whisper that still sounded like a threat. He stepped between her and the TV like he was blocking a crime. Jennifer didn't flinch. She just looked up at him and said, "The device isn't a student." Morrison stared at her like he couldn't decide whether to yell or implode. "You know what you're doing." Jennifer tilted her head, courtroom calm. "I'm using school equipment. If you don't trust your own equipment, that sounds like an admin problem." The librarian did that slow blink librarians do when they're watching chaos unfold but can't intervene without paperwork. The next policy update arrived before the end of the day. No using school devices as intermediaries. No leveraging pre-connected equipment. It was so specific it felt personal. Teachers started splitting into factions after that. Some were openly annoyed because now they were being dragged into it. Others were quietly entertained, like this was the most interesting thing that had happened all semester. I watched my history teacher read the new policy, sigh, and then fold it like it was a comedy flyer. Meanwhile, IT was getting hammered. Every time a rule changed, the network needed another tweak, another filter, another restriction, another monitoring tool. You could literally hear the help desk hold music drifting from the office sometimes when staff called to complain that their own tablets wouldn't connect. Morrison thought each update would end it. Instead, he kept handing us fresh objectives. That's when Alex entered the chat. And Alex didn't even need a cable. Alex was pure social engineering in human form. If Marcus was the loophole lawyer, Alex was the con artist who made you feel smart while you got played. One morning, he posted up near the teacher area with a clipboard and a calm face. He wore a lanyard like he belonged there. He approached teachers with the kind of polite confidence that makes adults turn off their skepticism. When a teacher asked what he was doing, he smiled and said, "I'm doing a security audit for my CS project." He had a little stack of papers clipped to the board, like forms. He had a pen. He had that slightly bored expression of someone doing official work. A couple teachers actually leaned in. One even nodded and said, sure, let me see," like he was helping the school. Alex never raised his voice. He never said, "Give me the password." He asked questions like a survey. How easy was it to connect? Did the prompt come up? What device did you use? And adults, being adults, love feeling useful. By the time a teacher realized what was happening, they'd already complied socially. Morrison called it deception. Alex called it research and stayed smug. Now we had multiple angles: physical loopholes, device loopholes, social loopholes. Morrison started acting like the building itself was under attack. He put out more announcements. He threatened confiscations. He warned about suspensions again, louder this time, like volume could fix logic. Then Sarah turned the whole thing into an economy. Sarah was an office aide, quiet enough that adults forgot she existed until they needed a stapler. She was the kind of student who knew exactly where the forms were kept and who was allowed to sign them. She also watched everything. Part of her job was helping set up devices when teachers had trouble. She saw the connection process up close. She saw the way certain devices got onboarded without anyone typing the full password in front of a class. She memorized the flow like it was choreography. Sarah never shared the password. That was the genius. She just offered a service. Kids would slide up to her in the hallway like they were buying concert tickets. She'd take their phone, walk them through the connection, hand it back connected, and keep moving. If anyone asked, she was helping with setup. She wasn't passing anything. She was providing labor. It spread instantly. Suddenly, the network was full of mysteriously labeled devices because Sarah encouraged kids to name them something boring. People got creative. Everything became a printer. The device list looked like a small factory had moved into our school overnight. The IT guy printed a report and almost cried. I saw it on his desk when I walked past the office pages and pages of devices called printer, printer 2, printer please work, printer love you. It was like a joke that had gotten out of hand and then started paying rent. Around that time, we got our first real taste of system pressure, the cold procedural kind that doesn't care if something is funny. I got pulled into the office because my name was on a list of frequent connection anomalies. That phrase alone felt like an accusation written by a robot. I sat in a plastic chair outside the IT room while the secretary typed at a keyboard like she was filing charges. The IT staff didn't yell. That was worse. They spoke in that flat tone adults use when they're trying not to show they're overwhelmed. They asked me what I knew. They asked who I'd seen. They asked if anyone had distributed credentials. I told the truth, which was also the most annoying answer. I just watched. speech. They made me sign a paper acknowledging the policy. They handed me an official-looking notice with a school seal. I watched another kid walk out with a confiscation slip for his phone, like it was evidence. Morrison loved paperwork because paperwork feels like power. He started leaning on it harder. Notices, warnings, meetings, threats of suspension that were always immediate, but somehow always coming later. But the more official it got, the more it energized people. Teenagers are allergic to authority when it's smug. The paperwork didn't stop the arms race. It just added drama. That's when the rumor hit. Someone said the password was posted somewhere students wouldn't go. That phrase did more damage than any cable ever could. It made the school sound like it had secrets. It made kids imagine a hidden sticky note in some forbidden adult sanctuary. The rumor evolved in real time. First it was in a staff-only room. Then it was in the principal's office. Then it became teacher bathroom because teenagers can't resist making it gross. Ryan took it personally. Ryan was a drone kid, not a future pilot kid. I have a drone and I will use it to be annoying kid. He showed up at lunch with a little case and that gleam in his eyes that says, "I'm about to ruin someone's afternoon." He launched the drone near the field like it was just a fun toy, except it had a camera. It buzzed over the building at a safe distance, and we all watched our phones like sports fans watching a replay. People clustered under trees, pretending not to care, but everyone was locked in. Somewhere in that footage, he got something readable. Not a full password in high definition, nothing like that. Just enough to make the adults panic, because now we had proof of concept. Students could look at things from angles the school didn't control. Morrison reacted like a man losing the plot. He added physical countermeasures. Curtains went up, signs went up, more signs. It looked like a haunted house made of laminated warnings. And still, kids kept getting online. That was open loop hash shown. How the hell were we still connecting when every obvious path got patched? Open loop hash 2 was tied to the rumor. Where was the real weak point? Who was helping? And why did the network feel like it had cracks no policy could seal? The adults thought the answers were, kids are cheating and we need stricter rules. The kids thought the answers were, the system is dumb and keep pushing. Then Emily quietly solved it like it was homework. Emily didn't hang out in crowds. Emily didn't brag. Emily didn't even look like she cared about Wi-Fi. She was the kind of student who sat in the back, finished her work early, and went back to reading like the rest of us were background noise. During one of the policy crackdowns, when everyone was obsessing over the teacher network, Emily opened her device's Wi-Fi list and noticed something old. It was a network name that sounded like it belonged in a different decade. Not the current teacher network, not the student guest network that had been locked down. An old broadcast the school apparently forgot existed after some past upgrade. She connected without drama, no cables, no intermediaries, no clipboard, just a quiet click. And she got better internet than the teachers. That was the moment Morrison's entire strategy started to rot from the inside. Emily didn't run around showing everyone how. She didn't need to. The school's own procedures did it for her. Someone in IT noticed the traffic spike. Someone pulled logs. Someone printed another report. They saw a strange SSID name showing up again and again like a ghost. They saw the bandwidth graph go wild. This was evidence reveal Hayshown, and it landed in the most satisfying way possible. Not through a student bragging, but through the system ratting on itself. In a staff meeting later crammed into a windowless conference room where the air smelled like burnt coffee and dry erase markers, IT showed Morrison a list of devices and connections. The report had a timestamp at 10:17, and it looked like a crime scene photo, except the crime was kids being smarter than a policy memo. The IT guy's voice was exhausted. He pointed at the page and explained that the network wasn't just being shared. It was being overwhelmed by volume and mislabeled devices. He said the monitoring tools were flagging hundreds of printers. He said the teacher network wasn't the only problem. Morrison stared at the report like it had betrayed him. He didn't ask why the old network existed. He just demanded to know who was responsible for spreading it. That's when the comedy went sharp for a second, because Morrison showed who he really was. A kid in my homeroom got called in after that meeting. His family didn't have money for unlimited data. He'd been using the school network to submit assignments. He came back pale, like he'd just gotten threatened in a language adults pretend isn't a threat. Word spread fast, and the next day, someone caught a piece of Morrison's rant through a cracked office door. It wasn't loud, but it was clear enough to hit like a slap. If your family can't pay for data, that's not my problem. That was the unforgivable line. Not because it was a felony or a scandal, but because it stripped the whole focus and integrity speech down to what it really was, control. It turned the principal from a strict adult into the villain of a very funny war. After that, even the teachers who'd been annoyed started looking at Morrison differently. You could see it. The mood shifted from, students are being ridiculous, to, okay, he's kind of being a jerk. Morrison doubled down anyway. He announced stricter monitoring. He threatened more confiscations. He said suspensions would be immediate. Then he finally did it. He dragged Marcus into a formal system scene, the kind that makes things official. Marcus got called into the office during third period. We all assumed it was finally the end of the saga, like the hero being dragged into court before the final act. People whispered in the hallways. People checked their phones like we were waiting on a verdict. In the conference room, Marcus sat across from Morrison and an assistant principal with a clipboard so thick it looked like it had its own gravitational pull. There was a sign-in sheet. There were printed copies of the policy updates like exhibits. There was a staff member stationed near the door like a bouncer. Morrison didn't even pretend it was a conversation. he treated it like a hearing. Marcus answered calmly, never defensive, never loud. Morrison accused him of undermining school rules. Marcus asked which rule he had violated. Morrison listed intent, disruption, circumvention. Marcus kept circling back to the written policy like it was scripture. He didn't argue ethics, he argued definitions. At one point, Morrison tried to end it with pure administrative force. He pointed at the policy page, voice flat, and said, "That's policy." Marcus nodded like he just received a helpful update. He didn't smirk. He didn't need to. The whole room could feel it. The principal was admitting the only weapon he had left was paperwork. Marcus walked out without a suspension that day because Morrison didn't have the clean violation he wanted. He had anger, he had embarrassment, he had a stack of policies that made the school look increasingly ridiculous. And the students took that as permission. The following week, the school was basically vibrating with it. Kids weren't even talking about sports anymore. They were swapping stories about who got confronted, who got away with what, which teacher accidentally helped Alex, which printer name made IT the maddest. I watched a science teacher try not to laugh while confiscating a phone labeled "Printer bless this mess." I watched a math teacher pretend to scold Marcus while quietly measuring the distance between two desks like he was curious. I watched the IT guy drink water like it was his only remaining hope. Morrison kept patching. Every day, a new update. Every day, the students treated it like a new level. Then standardized testing week arrived, and the entire war ran straight into reality. The online test required internet. There was no workaround. There was no just do it on paper. The system demanded connectivity, and suddenly Morrison had to do the thing he'd been avoiding, give students access. He tried to do it in the most controlled way possible. He announced that the password would be distributed securely and temporarily. He made it sound like he was handing out classified documents. But the second you give teenagers something secure, it becomes currency. The morning of the first test, we were herded into the gym, rows of chairs, proctors with clipboards. The air was thick with that nervous silence that always comes with big tests. Except under it, there was this electric anticipation, like everyone was waiting for the other shoe to drop. They wrote the password on the board at the front, big enough to read from halfway back. Morrison stood near it like a guard. Teachers walked up and down aisles, watching hands and screens. For a moment, it looked like the school had finally won. They had the environment, they had the rules, they had the proctors, they had the password, and students were actually typing it in. Then the first paper airplane launched. It didn't come from the back, like you'd expect. It came from the middle, calm and precise, like someone had timed it. A folded triangle sailed up over a row of heads and glided across the gym in a lazy arc. Slow motion hit, even if nobody called it that. I saw the airplane's shadow move over the polished floor. I saw a proctor's head snap up. I saw a kid's fingers pause mid-typing. I heard the soft hiss of paper cutting air. Then the airplane dipped. It wobbled. It corrected itself like it had purpose. It landed on the floor near the front row, and the kid closest to it didn't even reach down right away. He waited, like he wanted to watch the adults notice first. A teacher took one step toward it, another. Her shoe squeaked on the gym floor. A second airplane launched from somewhere else, then a third. The gym filled with these tiny white triangles, drifting and spinning, each one carrying something like it was the most valuable contraband on campus. I watched one airplane skim a proctor's shoulder. I watched her flinch like it had teeth. I watched Morrison's jaw tighten so hard it looked like it might crack. Then the chalk appeared. Someone had written the password along the track outside the gym in big block letters, like graffiti done by a kid who really cared about legibility. The proctors didn't even notice at first because they were trapped inside their own procedures. And then the announcements kid read it. Our school had this student who did morning announcements with the confidence of a game show host. He was supposed to read safe stuff, lunch menu, sports results, club meetings. That morning, his voice came over the speakers, and it sounded like he was reading a spell. He didn't read it as a string of characters. He read it phonetically, like the world's dumbest poetry. He tried to be helpful. He tried to be clear. You could hear the gym shift. The second those sounds hit the air, every kid who hadn't caught it yet suddenly had it. Phones moved. Screens lit. Fingers flew. The teachers' faces changed in real time, from "we're managing this" to "oh no." Morrison whipped his head toward the speaker like he could physically stop sound. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked around the gym like he was searching for someone to arrest on sight. But it was too late. It was public. It was loud. It was everywhere at once. The whole week turned into chaos. Not violent chaos. Bureaucratic chaos. The kind where adults scramble and make new rules and realize none of it matters because the system itself requires what they're trying to control. Teachers tried to cover the board. Kids already had it. They tried to whisper it to students one at a time. Students already had it. They tried to rotate the password faster. The test platform still needed everyone online at the same time. They tried to confiscate phones. Kids used laptops. They tried to block devices by name. Everything was a printer. At one point, Morrison tried to blame Ryan's drone, like the drone had somehow caused paper airplanes to exist. He tried to blame Marcus, like Marcus had invented writing. He tried to blame a culture of disrespect, like culture is something you can suspend. IT was drowning. The network was spiking and dropping and spiking again. Someone said the bandwidth chart hit 98% and stayed there like it was held up by spite alone. The help desk hold music became the unofficial soundtrack of testing week. Then Emily ended it, quietly, with the final evidence that closed the last open loop. She didn't do it in the hallway. She didn't do it on social media. She did it the way she did everything, calmly, in a small moment, like she was turning in an assignment. She walked into the IT office during a lull and handed the the IT guy a printed screenshot. It showed the old network still broadcasting, still alive, like a forgotten door left unlocked. At the bottom was a tiny system timestamp that proved it wasn't a rumor or a glitch. It was real, current, and entirely the school's mistake. This was evidence reveal #2, and it was devastating because it didn't accuse anyone. It just proved the truth. The school had been playing whack-a-mole with students while the real vulnerability was their own neglected infrastructure. The IT guy stared at the paper, then at Emily, then back at the paper like he was watching his job evaporate. He didn't yell, he didn't threaten. He just looked tired in a way I didn't even know adults could look. Morrison, when he got the news, didn't explode. He did something worse. He went quiet. 2 days later, an emergency assembly got called. You could tell it was serious because they didn't even pretend it was about Spirit Week or attendance. They just said everyone needed to report to the auditorium immediately. Morrison walked onto the stage like a man approaching a confession. His suit looked the same, but his posture didn't. He looked like someone had drained his battery and left him on low power. He didn't brag this time. He didn't project a padlock icon. He didn't say uncrackable. He admitted defeat without using the word defeat. He announced the school would return to open Wi-Fi with content filters. He said it like he was surrendering territory. The auditorium erupted. Not screaming, not riots, just that loud, triumphant wave of teenagers celebrating something they absolutely should not have been able to influence. Teachers looked relieved, like they could finally stop living inside policy updates. The IT staff looked like they might sleep for the first time in a month. Morrison tried to end the assembly fast, like speed could preserve dignity. He started to step away from the mic. Marcus, of course, couldn't resist. "About those content filters," Marcus called out, loud enough for the whole room. Morrison didn't even look at him. He just leaned back into the mic and said, "Don't. Just don't." The next day, the Wi-Fi password wasn't a password anymore. It became a joke phrase. Someone wrote it on a sticky note and slapped it on the wall like a trophy. Someone else changed it again quickly, just because they could, and the phrase spread like a meme. The funniest part was the aftermath nobody expected. Grades weirdly improved for a chunk of kids. Not because Wi-Fi makes you smarter, but because half the school had accidentally learned about networking, policy language, procedural loopholes, and how systems actually function when you stress them. People started joining the coding club. People started asking the IT guy real questions instead of just messing with him. Even Sarah toned down the "Connect It for You" service and started helping teachers set up devices without making everything a printer. Morrison avoided eye contact with the student body for a while. When he did show up, he looked like a man who'd been forced to learn humility against his will. The school went back to normal, except it didn't feel quite the same. We won. The open Wi-Fi came back. The filters went up. The policies stopped multiplying. But something stayed broken anyway. It wasn't the network. It was the trust. It was the way we all heard that line about families paying for data and realized the adults in charge could be cold in ways that had nothing to do with Wi-Fi. It was the way the school treated a technical problem like a moral failing, and how fast they were willing to threaten kids instead of fixing their own mess. Sometimes I still laugh when I see a device labeled printer pop up in the connection list, like a ghost of that month. Was I wrong for cheering when the principal finally surrendered?